Adventures in Research. This is Paul Shannon bringing you another transcribed story of science by Dr. Phillips Thomas, research engineer of the Westinghouse Research Laboratories. Today it is the dramatic story of the cow that stopped a plague. Of all the dumb animals that stalk the earth, few hold such a place in history as the cow. Primitive man counted his wealth in cattle. They furnished him with milk and meat, served as beasts of burden, plowing the soil and threshing the grain. The Romans punished the mistreatment of cows by inflicting severe penalties. The Hindus hold many of the species as sacred. It was a cow that allegedly instigated the Chicago fire. Indeed, just a cow that started one of mankind's greatest adventures in research. Of all the diseases that scourged mankind in the Dark Ages, the Black Death, St. Anthony's fire, leprosy, typhus, one of the most horrible ministers of death was called smallpox.
Is it never going to end?
Another one, I vow. The sign on the door.
Aye, 'tis the smallpox. It's got another.
Is there no end of it? My woman tells me Widow Humphreys lost another child to the smallpox. 5 of them, mind you. 5 that were all well and alive when I saw them last, not over a month ago.
The plague, they call it. Plague comes and goes and waxes and wanes. But not this. On and on it marches with no end in sight.
'Tis true, old Wilkes. 'Tis true. In faith, you cannot walk down the streets of London without seeing most of those you meet pockmarked.
Aye, and they the lucky ones. The lucky ones that live to tell of it.
'Tis a cruel visitation, and it spares none of us. I have heard that... but one must not speak of it.
Heard what, I ask you?
I tell you, one must not speak of it. But if you promise not to breathe a word, I'll tell you what I heard.
The king himself?
Shh, not so loud. One must not speak of the king and death.
But smallpox? His Royal Highness?
Aye, George III. Even now on his deathbed.
Who will be spared?
'Tis a cruel disease, old Wilkes. For it was the smallpox that carried off His Highness's parents, the both of them, and his uncle, the Duke of Gloucester, and his wife and 2 of his cousins, and even now wrestles with His Majesty.
Who will be spared? Who will be spared?
Yes, unlike the plagues that swept over Europe, smallpox never relented. It was well called the most ruthless minister of death. It is one of the most contagious of all diseases. And in the 17th century, 50% of those afflicted died of smallpox. And then, toward the close of the 18th century, a physician in rural England paused on his rounds in Dorchester.
Here you are, Dr. Jenkins, sir.
Thank you, Howley. Tankard of milk.
On a hot day like this, you need something to cool your innards, Doctor.
Yes. Very refreshing, Mr. Howley, and most generous of you.
They're the finest herd of cows in all Dorchestershire, if I may say so. Look at them yourself, Doctor. Aren't they fine and strong as ever you laid eyes on?
Yes, indeed. And it's a pleasure to look at something healthy.
I imagine it is, Doctor. You've been busy.
So many calls. Since the smallpox has broken out here, I haven't had time to close my eyes, trying to attend to them all.
Cool. Well, Doctor, begging your pardon, and knocking on wood, you need not worry about bringing your black bag to our farm. Nary a one of us here at the farm has got the smallpox. The good Lord willing.
Well, you're most fortunate. You know, that is odd, Howley.
I don't know, Doctor. And my father told me to be around cows, and you'll never fear smallpox.
I guess the old gentleman had something there. And now that I think of it, there's not a dairymaid in all Dorchestershire that ever had the disease.
I guess it's something to do with the cowpox, Doctor. Seems so once you get the cowpox, the smallpox stays away from you.
Yes. Cowpox.
Care for another tank of the milk, Doctor?
No, thank you, Howley. It was most refreshing. I'd better be on my way. Cowpox.
And country doctor Edward Jenner pondered the odd medical fact that dairymaids who had contracted cowpox seemed immune to smallpox. This was not a novel idea. 20-odd years before, a Dorchestershire farmer had noticed the same coincidence and had actually transferred the cowpox virus to a human being, the first successful vaccination. And a German physician, 5 years earlier, had vaccinated 3 children against the disease. But it remained for Jenner to make the first practical test. And May 1796 finds him back at the Howley Dairy Farm.
Mr. Howley, I'd like your assistance in a rather important experiment.
No, say now, Doctor. I don't want you doing any of your fancy experimenting on my cows. There's healthier herd isn't all the county, and they don't need no doctoring.
No, Mr. Howley. I'm not going to experiment with your cows. I need the help of one of your dairymaids.
Oh, that's all? For a minute you had me worried. I guess I can spare one of them if it would be helping you any.
It would indeed, Mr. Howley. I might well be on the trail of a cure for smallpox.
Cure? Smallpox, is it? Oh, Doctor, if it's helping you any, you can have the whole farm.
All I need is the help of one of your dairymaids. I'd like to examine their hands. Can you get one of them in here?
In 2 shakes of a lamb's tail. Hey, number girl. Come with you in a moment.
You want me, sir?
Your name's Edna?
Yes, sir, Edna. Edna Polk. I ain't done nothing.
Your hand, Edna. Well, how did you get this cut on your hand? Now, don't hide them. Just answer me.
I don't have no cut, sir. Oh, that little scratch. Oh, I got it on the thorn bush, I do believe. But it's nothing.
And it's festering. You've milked cows while that cut was open, and you've got it infected.
Oh, it ain't nothing but cowpox, Dr. Jenner.
Nothing but cowpox? My dear man, that's everything.
Then I ain't done nothing wrong.
My dear Edna, you may be helping save the world from a horrible disease. Thanks to you and that cow. Now, look, Jimmy, what are you crying for? I haven't hurt you, have I? I just asked you to bare your arm. Now, how old are you, Jimmy? Now, look, Jimmy, you want to be well, don't you?
Ain't nothing wrong with me.
No, and you don't want to have anything wrong with you. You don't want to get sick now, do you?
No.
Well, that's what we're going to prevent. Why, what I'm going to do to you will keep you from being sick from the smallpox. You don't want your face all pocked so the girls won't like you, do you?
Don't like girls.
Well, now, this isn't going to hurt a bit. And your name might even go into books for helping me.
In books?
Why, yes, indeed. James Phipps, age... Now, how old are you?
I'm 8.
Now, there. It's all over, Jimmy. Well, part of it. And who knows? Your name may be in the history books. And it didn't hurt, did it?
No.
Good. Now, tell you what, Jimmy. 8 weeks from today, you come back to my house, and we'll finish our little test. Hmm?
A few weeks later, in July of 1796, Dr. Jenner inoculated the boy with matter direct from a smallpox patient to prove the value of his cowpox vaccination. James Phipps did not get smallpox, nor did he when the entire experiment was repeated a few months later. Then Jenner inoculated 10 other persons who had previously had cowpox. None of them caught this most contagious of diseases. And so, in 1798, Dr. Edward Jenner, country physician of Dorchestershire, published his findings, and the news spread around the world.
And as chairman of the Board of Health in Boston, I thought you ought to be informed.
It is amazing if true, Dr. Boylston.
I'm not the first to try this vaccination in America. My good friend, Dr. Waterhouse...
Yes, I know him well.
Well, he vaccinated his 5-year-old boy against smallpox. And the boy hasn't caught the disease. And it's been over 2 years now.
Dr. Boylston, I'm sure you know how we of the Board of Health feel about smallpox. You're acquainted with the figures. 5,000 cases out of a population of 15,000. Now, that's what we had 40 years ago, and it hasn't improved much.
No. Well, as I say, I vaccinated 19 boys according to the method used by this Dr. Jenner. Then I inoculated these boys with smallpox. They didn't catch it. But 2 other boys I did inoculate with smallpox, 2 that hadn't been vaccinated, did come down with the disease.
Well, Dr. Boylston, I shall recommend to the Board of Health here in Boston that we make further experiments in the light of your discoveries.
Splendid, splendid. I'm sure you'll find, as I did, that...
Though I must say that cowpox seems to be a complete security against smallpox.
I believe so. And I'm delighted that you, as chairman of the Board of Health, have taken such an interest. Some of the other cities should have an organization with a chairman as helpful as you. Thank you, Paul Revere.
Test after test was made of Jenner's amazing disclosure. 3,000 persons were first vaccinated and then inoculated at the London Smallpox Hospital. And the pitiless plague passed them all by. The disease that once trapped 1/3 of the population of Boston, that once killed half of whom it touched, that ranked as the highest cause of death in all London, was at last captured. And praise and gratitude were heaped on the shoulders of the man who had brought about vaccination and put the name of 8-year-old James Phipps in the history books. One such letter to Dr. Jenner said,
Indeed, sir, if I had my way, every man, woman, and child in the United States would be vaccinated against this horrible, prowling, malignant disease. Your discovery of this safe, sure preventive of smallpox ranks with the greatest discoveries in the annals of history. I am certain that your findings, and mark you, I say this less than 10 years since your first test, your findings will eventually stamp out smallpox. I myself have taken the opportunity to be vaccinated and will champion the cause of vaccination throughout our United States, of which I am, with greatest admiration, President Thomas Jefferson.
And thus, one of mankind's greatest scourges, the pitiless plague of smallpox, was subdued, thanks to Dr. Edward Jenner, a helpful dairy farmer, a small boy with an urge for fame, and a certain anonymous cow. And that's today's story by Dr. Phillips Thomas, research engineer of the Westinghouse Research Laboratories. Join us again next week for another transcribed story by Dr. Thomas on Adventures in Research.